Are we rolling?
We're rolling.
All right. Is this first episode of the year?
Second.
Ah, all right. I had a whole speech. Doesn't work now. So, but we filmed everything else before.
Yeah, so this is the first one we're recording.
This is the first one we're recording after the holiday break. Hope everyone had a wondrous holiday. And it is, I would say, our fan favorite episode of the year, which is the annual. It didn't start out as an annual rant. It started out as an annual analysis of Cigar Aficionado's top 25, and then almost immediately became a yearly rant, because every year they give you something to rant about. So I'm here with Chris, and then we decided to bring back sweet, handsome Derek, our SEO manager.
Yeah, we haven't done Picks with Sticks or anything like that this year, and he was up here, and he's like, I haven't been up here in a while, so
it feels nice to be back.
Figured to have you on here, and that's a good balance. You and I balancing out Nick, I think, is you and I can take him on.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think anyone can.
First of all, we're all
we are all on the same side. We're all. I everything you say, I agree with you.
Everything?
No, well, with this list.
Okay.
I do want to give, this is going to sound pretentious, but I do want to give our list a shout out, because you're seeing a lot online. People kind of like watching our episodes that we've done, and in the episode and within the blog or the article about it in the magazine, Nick pretty much said every episode we had like a committee of 8 people. And for like the bronze back to be 7 of the 8 people's number 1, and then I think the 8th person it's number 4 or 5.
Wow.
So like we all gave a pretty legit. I think all of us who were on the committee pretty much did their homework correctly, and you can tell by people's responses, specifically on like Steve Saka's post and on our YouTube comments and whatnot, are saying like there's more than just, because we peeled the curtain back a little bit and said, first it was just me, you, and Greg, and then it was us 3 for a while, and then we had like 8 people this year. So
it's basically the whole buyer's department and us.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, we're in the buyer's department.
Well, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, but that was essentially
Okay, gotcha.
Like, and everyone here who is very much into cigars. And next year there's somebody in another department who's like smokes a ton and like really knows a lot, and it can add valuable input. Like they're more. It's not that we wanted to include as many cigar people as possible to give it as much of a consensus as we can. But yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it, Chris, and we said it in our episodes. Our top 25, I think is incredibly well balanced, and like Dojo's releasing theirs, and it's very interesting, and there's a lot of ones on there I agree with. There's also ones on there that are like a little harder to find. The only rule we really have for ours is like we have to sell it. Well, we sell most things, so it's not like out of left field like what we have on this list. We had 1, maybe 2 exclusives on it. We had the Crafted by JR Aganorsa, and then we had an exclusive size of the Mil Diaz on here. But like, I don't want to say, we saw one of our competitors' lists this morning. It's all just their private labels. Like that's all it is. So we try to give, and this is not based upon like sales, like these are the best sell. This is just the best cigars that our team enjoyed, which brings us to Cigar Aficionado. It's a joke at this point. Like they're laughing at the industry. I do want to make my disclaimer.
Okay.
The opinions about this list are in no way opinions of the cigars that are on the list. Several of the cigars on the list, even on past aficionado lists, have been on ours, are cigars we really enjoy. Every one of those cigars deserves a place on a top 25 list. So I don't want any of the manufacturers to think that we are saying you are undeserving for your brands. That has nothing to do with it. You guys are all deserving, and you all make fantastic products, a lot of which we have rated very highly and have put on our list as well.
Like the Oliva Serie V. The past few
Oliva
years,
Serie V.
that's been on our list. An iteration of it has been on our list, and it's been on CA's list too.
Yeah.
So we're not completely like,
No.
what would the word be, like kind of like screw the man, F the man. We're only going to do smaller boutiques or this or that.
No.
Like we are able to recognize when a cigar's a really good cigar. But another thing I feel like we always have to keep repeating to people is that we're not having a cigar that came out in 2012 on our list or 2010
or 2016
or 2016. Like I think Nick and I in the beginning, we're prodding ourselves on trying to keep the list within like no more than 3 years ago, like a cigar on there, unless if like we revisit and we're like, oh my God. But I mean,
to us. That was
new to
always
us. Yeah. New to us anyway.
So just to quickly go over for those of you who haven't seen it, we're just gonna do the top 10 because that's the ones that kind of matter. Some people say that the bottom 15 is like the real list.
Yeah.
Because that's the ones where like they didn't kind of
Isn't Foundation in like the
20, they didn't like
25
force
through 11?
placement
Yeah.
on there. It's kind of like things that they enjoyed, But number 1, we had My Father the Judge. Number 2, Monte Cristo 1935 Anniversary Nicaragua. Number 3, EP Carrillo Encore. Number 4, Padron 1926. Number 5, Partagas Linea Maestro, which is a Cuban. Number 6, Oliva V Milanio Maduro Torpedo, big surprise. Number 7, Rocky Patel Conviction Toro. Number 8, Cohiba Maduro 5 Cuban. Number 9, Arturo Fuente Don Carlos Eye of the Bull. And number 10, Brick House Churchill, which probably, I would say, probably maybe the most surprising. So on this list, we have a My Father, an AUSA, an Ernesto, a Padron, 2 Cubans, an Oliva, a Rocky Patel, a Fuente, and a JC Newman. Now, I know you did some data.
I did a little data dive.
I just want to say my data really quick. I don't think it's the same data.
It's probably not the same data.
I did this really
What was
quick.
your data?
I did this really quick. I put it on Microsoft Word. I just took a picture of it. I just went back the last 10 years. So the last 10 years, top 10 lists.
I did too. Okay, this is great.
That's 100 cigars that made top 10 in the top 10 over the past 10 years. Out of that 100, 74 are from Fuente, Padron, Rocky, My Father, Oliva, Ernesto, Ashton, AUSA, or Cuba.
Wow.
Out of the hundreds of premium cigar companies,
Wow.
74 out of 100 are from 8 companies and then Cuba. Cuba had the most top 10 placements with 15. Fuente had 11. They had 11 top 10 placements in 10 years. Padron has 10 top 10 placements, only once placing out of the top 5. Rocky had 8. My Father had 6. Oliva had 9. EPC had 4. Ashton had 4. And AUSA had 7. So in the past 10 years, it's been these companies. And that's really it. And these are companies that have been around for 20 plus years that have, they're big, they're great companies. Like each one of these cigars that have been on these lists are very worthy. Some of them have been placed on ours. If you're not seeing the absolute lack of awareness of the industry, then I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. And listen, if Marvin Changan or like the head of CA wants to just say, hey, listen, this is just my opinion. Like, okay, then call it Marvin's List. Don't say that you're the official, voice of the industry and be so blinded and be so narrow and be on the same exact. The My Father Judge, a very good cigar, came out 8 years ago.
Yeah.
You weren't in the industry when that cigar came out. You weren't in the industry when that cigar came out. This year, best cigar of the industry. Best one.
It's crazy.
It is incessant, and it's an insult to these companies. It's an insult to My Father that, oh yeah, we're going to give you something from 8 years ago. My Father's released amazing things in the past 8 years. AUSA has released amazing things in the past 10 years. All these companies have. And they keep reaching back. Oh, you just throw this one on there. Fine. Just put it on there. it's insane. I don't want to go into too much of a rant right away. But I want to go over some of your data.
All right, so the Oliva Serie V Milanio. Okay, so the data that I pulled is from the past 10 years. So it's from 2014 to 2024, obviously. The Serie V Milanio appeared on that list 9 out of 10 years. The only year it didn't make it was 2015. But for whatever reason, it's all different sizes. So that's like the only cigar on the list that continues to make the list. It's a good cigar, but 9 out of 10 years. That's how...
So that's what I'm saying, is that by doing this, you're doing the industry and new smokers a disservice. Although I have to say, I imagine that the kind of the big rush that getting number one gets in terms of a sales opportunity, it's probably still a big deal. It's probably not as big of a deal as it was 10 years ago. I would imagine. I would imagine now enough new smokers who are our age are looking to half wheel and podcasts and Instagram, and like I would have to say it's not as impactful, but it's still impactful. So getting at number one is still impactful.
I wish I was more aware of when we first started lists, like how many people were doing lists, because I see them a lot now. Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm seeing a lot, only because Saka's reposting it, is the Sin Compromiso number 4, which was our number 4, and the Bronze Back are landing in people's lists in the top 5, right? So, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try and like trim it down. I think for Oliva and like for CA in general, the best way I can kind of describe it or compare it to is like the Oscars. The Oscars are not like, you guys watch a lot of movies. I don't think the Oscars are really for you guys. I like watching them because I see some of those movies, but you guys watch, like, I think you guys have, like, I think your guys' movie taste is necessarily different than mine. The movies that are at the Oscars being nominated, I haven't watched all of them. I'm like, how can you deem that's the best? Or like, why isn't comedy in there? So I think like CA is for a specific demographic, but now that demographic to me is being, I don't want to say overthrown essentially, but like a lot of people who have talked to me about the CA list that don't work here is like, this is for the old man. Like, this is for the older generation, the old men. Like, it's not really showing love in the entire industry. And I personally think lists, or nominations, award shows, they need to kind of show love to the such a massive industry, right? I know like independent films get like the Spirit of Independent Awards and all that, but for lists that come out at the end of the year for like the cigar industry, I mean, I think this might be the first thing where I am a kind of a little snobby about something, because I'll look at certain people's lists and I'm like, man, like, I haven't even heard of these cigars, but I mean, I like that I'm seeing something different rather than, you guys pulling numbers, and when you really strip it down to that, like, that cigar you're smoking is in the top 5 or top 10, 9 out of the past 10 years. And you're telling me that, like, there's no other Oliva that can surpass that.
Right.
I think it does a little bit of, I don't know, it's a disservice, because I think I don't know if you said, Nick, or not, that younger, newer cigar smokers are gravitating towards CA. I think CA is made for celebrities because that's all that's on their magazine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no like, I don't know if AJ Fernandez has ever been on their magazine, or someone within the industry has been on their magazine. It's always like a Nick Jonas, James Hetfield. Like
the few exceptions have been like Carlito Fuente.
Yeah,
like
okay.
Before the family got the cover.
So you could just tell right from the magazine itself, like all they give a shit about is probably like being associated with like high-end celebrity, like the upper echelon, and they're probably really not about.
But that's
the working dogs in the industry.
That's the thing. Every industry, from media and content to has changed so drastically in the past 20 years that like what, you just want to like, I want to rub elbows with like the Fuentes and the Padrones of the world. Like, yeah, that's cool, but like that's not a majority of where like things are happening anymore. That's like who were like the last movie stars really? Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt,
DiCaprio,
Leo.
yeah.
Like that's real. Everyone else, like
Denzel,
they're stars, but like they're kind of stars within a niche, and it's like
Yeah.
but it's the same thing of like think of like traditional media is still like Oprah's still gonna have on Leo, and this guy's
Yeah.
still gonna have on Brad Pitt, but like it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's the same conversations, it's the same people saying the same things, and I hate to bring it into like this kind of world, but it's like Joe Rogan having some interesting person on, or like some interesting actor who did like a few small things, or like, having like Tarantino like doing like a weird thing, as opposed to just like these these are sound bites. Cigar Aficionado is sound bites of the same top movie stars doing their promotional run, talking about Titanic or talking about whatever, and there's no body behind it anymore. And these people have interesting things to say if you give them the right platform. Like, my father has released anniversaries and a redux of the Jaime Garcia. They've released really interesting things the past couple of years. Things that I think put things like the La Opulencia and the Judge like much farther down my list. So you're not even doing a service to these companies. You're not even getting the best, newest, like brightest versions of them out there. You're just like painting by numbers. And you're colorblind. Like, that's the problem.
It sounds like they're like stuck in time, basically.
They're
like
so
they're 10 years
stuck
behind.
in time. And every year I'm like, no, they're going to have one in the top 5 that's like really surprising. And they never do. I mean, and listen, when I was growing up within the industry, like even up until I want to say like maybe 2018, 2019, maybe up to 2020, like it was still like when Ernesto got number 1 for the first time. Or like even when La Flor Dominicana Andalusian Bull got number 1, or when Le Bijou got number 1, there was like, they had kind of like let somebody new into their club. But for the past, I want to say 4 years, it's been the same club now. It's been the exact same club. And maybe somebody like a Nick Melillo or Aganorsa can like kind of squeak in to it. But you got to think over 10 years, 25 cigars have not come from those companies. And by the way, a lot of those were still similar companies. It was still like Alec Bradley or J.C. Newman or, someone like that, or, General. There was not a lot of like Aganorsa, HVC. There was a couple of Illusiones, a couple of Tatuajes that they kind of give like, oh yeah, good job, Pete. We'll let you kind of play with the big boys a little bit. When like Pete Johnson is like a generation-defining Crown Heads never gets talked about. Dunbarton never they refuse almost outwardly to like review his stuff. I think we talk about it every year. There's some like thing there.
They just don't like each other, basically.
They just don't get along. But like Dunbarton really, from our list and Half Wheel and Dojo and Coop and basically everybody else, Dunbarton has dominated top 25 lists the past 5 years.
Yeah.
They haven't even reviewed one of his cigars since Sober Mesa, like the original Sober Mesa. How do you maintain... This is like the most critically acclaimed, biggest box office hits were from like the same director 5 years in a row, and the Academy doesn't even acknowledge that director is alive.
A lot of good movie comparisons.
It's very similar. But the one thing that I got to say that the Oscars does better than CA is like they will take some weird like small indie movie that like me and Chris never heard of and nominate it for an Oscar, because like the only qualification is it has to be new.
Yeah.
I wish CA at least held to that. At least held to that. 8 years old for your number one. So you're telling me again, and I say this every year with whatever it is. You're telling me in the past 8 years, nothing created is as good as this. Nothing. Now, I realize that tobaccos will change with environment and with weather. So, like, you'll have some years where, like, a certain thing is better. Maybe it's not as good or the quality kind of change. But come on. Just come on. It's so... give me more data. I need to calm down.
So besides that, the other like 3 brands that were mentioned the most was La Flor Dominicana Double Ligero. That's 5 times. Padron Series 1926. That was also 5 times. And then the Padron 1964 was 4 times as well. So like those are the ones that are like the sub brands are most frequently talked about. So I also looked at the top brands that were mentioned the most in the past 10 years. And out of like the 10, Rocky Patel was mentioned 11 times, like you said. So it's Rocky Patel, My Father, AJ, but it was AJ sub-brands that were mentioned the most.
Okay.
La Flor Dominicana, Padron, Oliva, Alec Bradley, and then EP Carrillo. That was all, I think it was like the top, that was the top 8. And then after that's Cohiba, Drew Estate, and then they do have Tatuaje there as well.
How old's the Encore? It wasn't that number 1?
That was
that
number
was
one
Pledge.
last year.
That was number 1
Last year, right?
Hold on, I gotta go back and look. The Pledge, I think, was
2021.
Yeah, I have to go back to their archives. Hold on.
What was last year's?
Last year.
Last
was
year,
last year was Opus.
Yeah.
It was the Opus.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Big fucking surprise.
So, which number 1 between 2024 and 2023 like infuriates you the most?
Hold on. So 20. No, man. When was it? It might have been like 18
2020?
and 20. It was 20.
I was here for
20,
this.
20 was the Pledge, and then I think 18 was the Encore.
It was 2020 for the pre-
And
the
then
Pledge
in
prequel.
between that was
The
Aging Room. Because I remember starting and yeah.
To be honest, the number one that has given me the most grief out of all for the past like however many years, there's 3 of them. It's the Padron 64, the Opus, and then this year's.
Yeah.
Only because you listen, Encore and Pledge were both fantastic number 1 worthy cigars that came out within a relatively
That's what I was going to say.
a relatively close period of time to
Yeah.
when they were named number 1. The Padron 64 has been out for 30 fucking years. The Opus has been out for 30 years. The Opus is older than people who work here. And that blend, like they have other blends, but the blend that they're rating hasn't changed. I also, say what you want about Cubans, I have a problem with like, everyone is pretty consistent across the board that the quality of Cubans has gone down tremendously the past 20, I mean, really since the embargo, but the past 20 years is just an immense decline in quality. They're rating Cubans higher now than ever. They're constantly in the top 10. Meanwhile, if you look at Half Wheel, and I'm not saying Half Wheel is the be-all and end-all. They have their own issues and their own prejudices, just like we do, just like anybody does. But I'm trying to think, like, if you looked at the last 20 Cuban reviews on Half Wheel, they torched a lot of them. A lot of them were like the low 80s because of quality issues. So the fact that like Cubans are like 1 or 2 slots guaranteed, like here's the formula. A Padron will get top 10. A Fuente will get top 10. A Rocky Patel will get top 10. A My Father will most likely get top 10. A Cuban will get top 10. Oliva V will get top 10.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of a race between Ashton maybe.
Did you say Altadis?
Altadis recently, yeah. Altadis will kind of throw their hat in the ring. Placencia might, screw around there. Tatuaje, again, every once in a while they throw them at like number 7 or something like that. To be a smaller manufacturer and break into like the top 5, you need to have something like ground, which is why the Wise Man Maduro got number 3. That was huge for Nick. And again, well deserved. But
I thought the Olmec when it came out was gonna kind of be that, but no, I know.
No.
I had
and
high
also,
hopes.
like, even Altadis, the 1935 is great. The Double Diamante, which we rated, I think is slightly better. And I think the 180th is probably the best cigar Altadis has released in the past year and a half. Neither of them were included on this list. You picked the one from 4 years ago. Again.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It's insane. It's insanity. And then watch, 4 years from now, when Altadis is killing it and like, M is fully out there and everyone, like they're killing all these big things. Watch, then they'll go back and then they'll rate the 180th. When it's not even a thing anymore.
I remember you were triggered about the Cohiba Riviera. I remember you were like, what the fuck is that about?
That's on our list, though.
I know, but I remember like yours, like it just seems like they could have picked something different like this year for the for Cohiba. For CA's list.
Well, yeah, because I mean,
Cohiba has so many brands. Like again, we said we are handheld by like what we sell.
Right.
We don't sell like the Cohiba Spectre.
No.
Which is an ungodly good cigar, we didn't sell like the Weller. Like we were out of the Weller. Like we couldn't really rate that because people couldn't buy it. So when you're a CA, if you're going to, and you have the breadth of Cohibas to review and pick from,
Why?
to pick the Riviera, like the Riviera
Yeah.
to us was a tremendous cigar, and it was like the Cohiba that we
sell.
we kind of work with.
Yeah.
But like, I think the Spectre might be the best cigar General has like ever done.
Yeah.
And like, you have the ability to put it on your list, and you don't. You choose not to.
And the Cohiba you do put another Cohiba you put on your list is a Cuban, and I just think
Ranked higher.
I think
ranked much higher. And
So-
Cuba's not even involved in their marketing. I don't think.
if we, because this might not make sense because we don't sell Cubans, but I think having Cubans on a list where the majority of people, I'm going to say in the United States anyway, they
Can't access it.
Can't access it. So if someone green is coming across this list and they see like a third of it is Cubans, they're going to think that's the standard when it's not. Like to me, it's like I said, I've been in the industry 6 years. Cubans were always like, oh my god, like a lure, like oh wow, that's the, it open. It's like the shiny briefcase that opens in Pulp Fiction, right? When you unwrap it, that's what
And
it
there was
comes
nothing
off.
inside.
Yeah, that's what comes off. That's why what it comes off as.
Let me hear it. Click on the. We'll just keep
Yeah.
going, but click on the Cuban. Go up. Click on
And
the
I-
Partagas one. Up. Yeah, click on that one.
And I think that people like our parents' age, like they are just so enamored with Cubans, right? They are enamored by it, or people think like, oh my god, because that's the first question I get when I tell someone like I work in the cigar industry is like, oh, what do you
You
think?
get Cubans, yeah.
What do you think of Cubans? And I just think it's silly to have it on your list. But how I look at CA, like what they're doing with their list, I have a few things that are going through my brain. They're either trolling everybody because they know that it's going to piss like people off, or they are really detached from what's going on day in, day out. And that it has to be the latter because
the latter.
how do you not? And yeah, listen, we're fanboys of certain brands. But how do you not have like what last year, maybe 2 years ago, like Foundation released like 3 or 4 cigars and none of them were on the list.
The Olmec got one of the highest ratings, like that October or September that like they put out that year. That Aficionado put out, and it didn't make the list.
Yeah.
It got like a 94 or a 95 and didn't make the fucking list. You're going to tell me that something's not going on? Two things. One, if you scroll back up to that Cuban Partagas and click on it. First of all, look to the right.
What do you mean? Oh, look at that. That's us, babe.
Yeah. And do you see what it says?
Congrats to all who made the list. Triggered.
Yeah. But look at the MSRP on that Cuban. 71 pounds, which is like probably $80.
You could swing that.
But like, what are you doing? Where like it's a fake number. So like I guarantee that cigar was released 2 years ago. Maybe it's $25. 70 pound, $80 cigar. $80 for a Partagas, by the way. I never even heard of. I never heard of the Maestro. I mean, I know it's new, but like it's obviously not. Like I hear when a new big Cohiba comes out, or a big Hoyo, or a big Romeo.
Yeah.
I didn't fucking hear about this thing. And you gave it, what was it, number 5?
Number 5.
This was your number 5 best cigar of the year. This
95 rating.
one, Partagas from General did better,
Yeah.
more renowned Partagases this year.
What do you think about the list as a whole?
I mean, I remember looking at this and I saw like number 6 was the Oliva Serie Milano, and I thought it was just like, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I was happy to see obviously Axum up there at number 12, and then you talked about before with like the Suma. I was really happy seeing that up there because I think that was like actually my number 1 cigar last year, I think. But I love that cigar.
So let's take Oliva. Oliva's a great example. Oliva has released recently, things like the 135th anniversary, like Oliva V. New blends and new stuff. Yet they choose to pick this same. You're not doing Oliva any favors. Dude, do you think Oliva needs any more help selling Vs? We can't keep Vs, and we're selling them like
Yeah.
madmen.
They're good cigars.
They're very good cigars.
But to mention every single year is like fucking
every
it's crazy
single
to me.
year. And honestly, if I'm Oliva, I'm like, thank you for the rating, obviously, and the consistency, but I'm like, you think we haven't done anything good in the past decade? Is that what you're saying? Because if I'm a cigar maker and like my same cigar keeps getting rated top 10 every year. I'm like, thank you, but like, you're basically saying I'm a one-hit wonder at this point because you're saying nothing else has surpassed this. I think that this is just a window, and then the conviction.
That's
which
crazy too.
I did smoke one when they were here. It is very, very good. I have
$100 for a cigar though.
If I didn't work in the industry, if I was just a wealthy guy on my own who just liked cigars and wanted to put out a list, I would have no problem putting something like the Conviction on there because it's just like, hey, this is my opinion. These are literally in terms of just the best cigars. What we try to do, and it happens kind of naturally, again, because we sell these things, is that what these lists should be is a guide to which brands that are like possible for you to like purchase or engage with are doing something new, are elevating their game, are staying with the current trends. Like to have like if a list of like Davidoff Oro Blanco on it. I mean, if you wanted a totally like no nonsense, no rules, just best cigars, sure. But when you're part of the industry, you want to put forward something that's going to help the industry kind of move forward, help engagement with consumers to bring people in. Saying that the best cigar of this year was a $500 cigar is not helping anyone because you're not really going to get more sales on that one.
Can I say something though?
Yeah.
I feel like this list really isn't meant for people like us. And it's exactly what you guys were saying before, where it's meant for people who are much more upscale, have actually the money to afford a $100 cigar or buy multiple $100 cigars.
I mean, I don't.
So it's not really meant for people within the industry. It's meant for people that can afford and want luxurious type of cigars.
But luxurious. I mean, this is not at all. But the Brick House is like,
what is that? It's number
10 is like $8.
Yeah.
Like I think that also made their like best budget cigars. Like what is it?
It's $8.85.
Yeah, it's $8.85. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not a tremendous premium cigar. It obviously is. But that's not what I would call like a super high-end. It's not a Plasencia Almafuerte or a Davidoff or whatever.
But they're also picking brands that are much more traditional. That people are going to recognize that, be like, okay, I know. I have heard Padron before. I'm going to make sure I buy that Padron.
But that's not their job. Their job isn't to show people. That's not what their job should be. Their job should be providing insight and content, not as heavy into the industry as Half Wheel gets. Half Wheel is an industry newsletter, essentially.
Right.
Like the general populace does not check Half Wheel.
They're going to be checking CA, yeah.
They're checking CA. But CA has a responsibility as the publication of as the representative of our industry to the world. They have a responsibility to do a better job.
Would you say they're the face of the industry? Like I know
they
would say so,
compare it to like sports, obviously, because that's all I talk about. But are they the face, or like, like where do you think? And like, I mean, if you and modestly, where do you think we stand? Because a part of me, I don't think I realize how big we are, like in just terms of like the reach we have on people.
If you take it in terms of like, think of the podcast industry. Like, there's a lot of people who like don't really know what a podcast is.
Yeah.
But everybody's heard of Joe Rogan.
Yeah, yeah.
They are like the Joe Rogan. Whereas maybe people who are really into podcasts, like your favorite is Theo Vaughn or your favorite is this guy. But like my mom hasn't heard of any of those people, but she's heard of Joe Rogan. So it's kind of the representative to the world of our industry. And I mean, dude, if I only smoked... If I only took my recommendations from Cigar Aficionado, I never would have heard of some of my favorite. I never would have heard of Dumbarton. Never would have heard of HVC. Never would have heard of like Black Label Trading Company. Mm-hmm. Barely would have heard of Foundation. Barely would have heard of. Never would have heard of Crown Heads. Like the cigars, and also by the way, the cigars. If we want to talk about it from an industry standpoint and a sales standpoint. The companies that we had really big growth with the past couple of years, because people are much more leaning into them now, are just nowhere represented on this list. And again, the companies that are represented, you're not even doing the best by them.
Yeah, I don't think CA knows the power that they have.
No, they do. They just like the thing is they know the power that they have. And they know because they have that power, who's going to stop them? Who's going to say anything?
Well, I mean, I guess, yeah. I was just like to consider what I was going to say. I just feel like if they were able to mix up their list and give the smaller guys a shout out, a chance, show them some love, I think that would, to me, like this is strictly, I'm looking in my camera, this is strictly my point of view. It would make, and I'm a nobody, but it would make my respect level go through the roof for them. Because to me, I don't think they, I don't know. Derek said it perfectly. Like, it's just, they are for the people who can afford the $500 a stick on a daily basis. And they're not for everyone who might be on a budget, who's looking for budget-friendly cigars or looking for boutique cigars or looking for, because I feel like people have a problem with, like, I wonder if people have a problem with our list being a little bit more boutique-y or being this or being that, but like, that's just what we've been drawn to.
But I've seen our list. I feel like it's a good variety where it's like you have the boutique brands, but you also have like the mainstream ones. So it's like a good mix of everything.
I think it's
where
a
you can
good mix.
both.
I'm not trying to,
That's what
stroke
that's
our
what we're
ego
aiming
too
for.
much. But I mean, I just look at some other lists and I think that there's no balance there.
Well,
and I think we finally found the balance in the force for our list, in my opinion.
And here's a point along with you, Chris. If people want to look at our list and say that it's more boutique, well, you got to think of it this way. Boutique companies are mostly relatively still new. So when they're putting out a new brand, it's not something they've like kind of already done already. It's not competing with something that's already in their portfolio. It truly is like a new experience for them. Whereas when you're one of these bigger companies, like you've had so many years and so many cigars that like a lot of times when you release something, it might be better, but it's very similar to something else because of the breadth of your portfolio. So like when Nick releases like a new crazy thing or Crown Heads, it is a big deal for that company because like the 10th anniversary, which I really wish we had gotten sooner. The 10th anniversary Las Calaveras, I think would have easily been a top 5 cigar of this year. But in terms of the experience of that cigar, it was almost completely new for the Crown Head smoker. Same thing with La Vereda the other year. It was so unique to that brand. The problem is companies like AUSA or Davidoff or Padron or Fuente. I'm not saying you're not making unique cigars, but like don't forget, you've just made so many over the 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
It's hard. Eventually anyone's going to run out of steam. Like eventually anyone's going to make something that's very similar to another thing that they made. And look what they released this year. And I thought they were both excellent. But like, what do we have on our list? The Doble Diamante, which is an elevated version of the 1935, and the 180th, which is an elevated version of the 175th. They were tremendous cigars. They were not radically different from the other two that, by the way, we have also rated very highly on our list.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bronzeback, which I'm smoking now, and you say, oh, well, Saka does a ton of Maduros. Smoke this compared to any other Maduro that smoke this compared to a regular Mi Querida, a Tricky Traca, or a Papa Saka. Blindfolded, those are completely different cigars. They're not even in the ballpark. In terms of like the experience. Some of the flavor notes, sure, but in terms of the experience, they are wildly different. So when a boutique company releases something new, and also they have to build up their portfolio, so they're pumping. Crown Heads is pumping out. They have to pump out new stuff. They need to build out a portfolio where there is like a something for everyone kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger deal. So if our list is a little more boutique heavy, it's because boutique companies are almost by their nature are forced to release more and more unique things to stay competitive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, does that mean that these big companies don't? I mean, I think the Monte Cristo M easily 1 or 2 this year. If we had gotten it by the time we made the list, easily I think it's 1 or 2.
Well, those companies don't need to. I don't know. I guess they don't have to like hustle, like pump out 5, 6, 7 cigars a year to make profit or whatever, because these you know,
their
these
steady
companies are
lines.
just, you know, they're making bank.
Yeah, they have their steady lines, and for
Yeah.
them, it's more about consistency and maintaining
Yeah.
that rather
Yeah.
than doing these new,
Something
crazy
new.
exotic blends.
Exactly.
But I think the mass, I don't want to speak for it, but I think most of us want something new and creative from some of these older companies because, you know, like, yeah, like how many different versions of the Oliva V were on CA? Like, but I mean, I guess you just keep going back to Old Faithful and it's old reliable and like, all right, okay,
Yeah,
a cigar I love, is
I
gonna
also-
always be on the list. But
I want to know how fine-tuned their palates are that the Padron 1926 this year tasted so... Like, why wasn't it on the list last year? But it was on the list 2 years ago. You're smoking enough Padron 1926s that you can tell month to month that there's a difference in it, and you can pick up on that difference and rate which one is better and which one is worse. That seems amazing. That seems you should be in a circus. That seems like it's like your magic if you can do that. You can tell me the different variations of the Padron 26 over the past decade and when it hit and when it didn't. I'll be honest. I have a pretty good palate. I'm not going to say it's the best by any means. It's just not. I know what I like. I like what I like. And I love the Padron 26. It's my favorite Padron by far. Well, that and the 90th, which is technically a 26. I cannot tell you if I smoked one tomorrow that it's drastically better or drastically worse than one I had 4 years ago.
Yeah. It's kind of, honestly, when you put it in that perspective, it is literally insane.
It's insanity.
It's
It's literally
insanity.
insanity.
unless if they're making like notes, like, and they're referencing the notes 4 years ago and seeing
just
what the
no way.
difference is, but no, there's no way.
But you got to remember, to get an accurate barometer of anything, you need to be, like, because, you know, if they smoke the 26 once a year and that once a year review decides whether or not they put it on their list or
Yeah.
not, it's like, well, what was your mood? Like, what did you eat that day? They have to be smoking a ton of 26s a year, a ton of Oliva Vs every year. Like, in order to have these cigars on the list like this, you have to be smoking just these things all of the time. In order to pick up that the Padron 26 number 6 was deserving of number 4 this year, but not last year, but then the year before was the other side. Like,
It does make sense.
it is nonsense of the highest degree.
Were there any Aganorsa on the list?
This year?
Yeah.
No.
I don't think so.
Because that kind of surprises me.
Where was the warped Corto made? Go scroll all the way down. Click on the one on the left.
Like an horse leaf.
Yeah. So the warped
Okay,
warped
all right.
Corto. I keep knocking this fucking thing down. I'm so angry.
Calm down, dude.
I will say that Quesada, I think, got. I mean, in terms of their back end, got 2 because I do think that where's that Casa Magna made?
Quesada.
So Quesada got 2 on there.
You're good.
Yeah, we're working with them. They did our revival.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it like, yeah, don't do.
No, let's talk about
I
it.
can't stand that.
Come on.
No,
Why not?
those are the guys who used to own Cigar Inn, and I think that the cigar is pretty good, but like,
But it's an AJ brand.
it is. People are
What
like
cigar?
so in love with that brand. I
The
just don't
Viva
get
La Vida Jester.
it. People are so in love with that brand. I just don't get it. But like, I'm not
have
gonna.
you had this before?
I've smoked it before.
It's okay. A CSC?
It's good. It's not AJ's best, and AJ has.
Didn't
a
Jim
lot
say
of
that
best.
was strong as hell, that one?
It is very strong.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's the other thing. I mean,
I'm not smoking
clear
that.
from
I'm not smoking that one.
take AJ for example. Now, AJ has had a lot of cigars he has made on this list because he does a lot of the
Yeah,
Altadis
yeah.
stuff, a lot of this stuff, a lot of that stuff.
Just his brands alone is mentioned 12 times. Like in the past 10 years.
His brands or
His brands.
Yeah, but that's not a dude. If you think
Compared to all the other brands, that's the most.
but
literally
you're,
12
you're,
times.
You're talking in terms of all 25 cigars.
All 25 cigars
Yeah.
for the past 10
for
years?
the past 10 years.
But you got to remember, for AJ Fernandez, that's not impressive.
Really?
12 times he's been somewhere in the top 20. He's the most prolific blender in the industry right now.
The brand. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
He makes the most cigars.
But you're only talking about his solo
I'm just talking about
his own stuff.
everything
not
else. Like, we're not
collaboration.
including
The
like
fact
any Monte
that-
Cristo
The
stuff
fact that he does such
or
good
aging
work,
room.
Yeah.
and he's only like his brands have hardly ever been in the top 10, never even close to a number 1.
I think.
San Latano, Ramon Iones,
But
they've
what
never
about the
been-
aging room?
but that's not his brand though.
Yeah.
But he still is a part of all
But
those
that's what I'm
cigars
saying.
in the top 5.
That's what I'm saying. There's a difference between
His own brand.
brand
Yeah.
and the
That's what
brand
you're
that he
saying.
does.
I understand.
So,
Because if we're not talking about like his brand alone, it's got to be way more than that.
AJ
Oh, yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to give AJ credit for like the Cuatro Nicaragua, but like the industry kind of like they don't really care where it's made as like a unit. They're like it's a Rafael Nadal, and Rafael Nadal does the blending for those. So like he gets
the
his
credit.
He gets his credit, which he should. But like I want to say that the factory that is on that list the most all the time, it
AJ's.
has to be AJ.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think of the past Altadis brands that have gotten rated. It has been the Romeo Reserve Real Nicaragua, Henry Clay Warhawk, which is Florida coupons. We're not going to count it. So we have the Reserve Real Nicaragua,
Cuatro Nicaragua.
Monte 1935, Monte 1935 again, Cuatro Nicaragua, the 175th,
Yes.
and the 18. So 6 out of the 7 Altadis brands that have been made in the past several years, 7 out of the 8 were all made at AJ. And AJ's never but I don't think that Cigar Aficionado views him the same way they view Pepin Garcia, because Pepin Garcia does a lot of, he does a lot of Tatuaje stuff, and Tatuaje does get rated, but like they give all the credit to like the Pepin stuff, like the My Father. Fuente does all the J.C. Newman stuff and this stuff, but like the one that gets the most credit is the Fuente. They don't give AJ like the credit AJ deserves on his own brands. I'm curious to see, I know it came out later, if next year, if the AJ 20th kind of gets on the list somehow. Because I haven't smoked that one yet, but I've heard it's phenomenal. But the fact that Pete Johnson has never gotten a number 1, I think is terrible. The fact that Saka or Melillo or Huber or Lorenzo or any of these guys are most likely never going to taste number 1 on this list is an injustice to the industry for what these guys have contributed, for what these guys, like how they're keeping the industry relevant. If you look at the massive influx of cigar smokers that we got during COVID and that have kind of maintained, if you took that demographic, these are all people who started smoking during COVID, and then compared it to all the people who were smoking before, the boutique percentage of the COVID people is going to be substantially higher. Substantially higher. I would say maybe 20 to 30% higher in boutiques than the people from before. Because these people were home alone. They weren't getting Aficionado just delivered to their house every day. They were home alone. They were working from home. They were listening to podcasts. They were on Instagram. And what is that world introducing them to? It's introducing them to Crown Heads Foundation, HVC, Warped, Black Label, Tatuaje, because that's what everyone else enjoys. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're still getting Olivas and Rockies, again, as they should. But, again, they're just not giving the credit that is due to the people who are going to be maintaining the future. Just like, listen, Budweiser is always going to be around, and they should be. They're a titan, and what they've done for same thing with Molson Coors and these guys. But if you put out a top beer list and it was just Budweiser, Bud Light, Coors Light, and fucking Heineken, these are the best beers this year, you're out of your goddamn mind. With like, what is driving the beer industry these days? Breweries.
Yeah.
And craft breweries.
Yeah.
Craft. Now, again, there's so many of them that it's not like there's one craft brewery that can really compete
with a Budweiser.
But Budweiser also like bought some of these guys. Like they bought Blue Point. You know, like they've gotten into this game. If you look at what some of these big companies are doing, which is smart, they're getting in, you know, like General did I think it was a Partagas with like a Lugione. Like the big companies, the big manufacturers are getting smarter. They're getting hip to this thing, which is smart. Again, none of this is any insult towards the big manufacturers. It is how they are being utilized by CA.
Yeah. But the thing I notice, if we're going to be comparing the beer industry and the cigar industry, is the big you have like your Budweiser, your Bud Light. In terms of obviously producing the beer, it's standard. They're not doing anything kind of crazy. But like Bud Light kind of bringing in Shane Gillis, that's to me trying to get to a younger demographic or maintain that demographic of what maybe Bud Light users or drinkers have been since the dawn of time, right?
Right.
Breweries, other, or you go to liquor stores, or and you see different types of beers. Or, you see like a Yingling that have kind of went into the Oktoberfest game. Like that's gonna bring in more people.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess some of these bigger companies in the cigar industry can't. I don't know. Like can't test the waters, I guess, or say let's make something maybe a 23-year-old guy starting out smoking might enjoy.
I can tell you, like from my perspective, as like someone who's like, I'm not at the same level as you guys, obviously, but I do enjoy cigars. I've been enjoying cigars like most of my life. For me now, it's like it's an investment of my time. So if I'm gonna invest my time in a cigar, especially when I'm home and I have like kids and shit, I'm not gonna invest it on like a Roman Julieta 1875 because I smoked a shit ton of those cigars.
Yeah.
I want to smoke something that's unique and different for my palate, and it's like a new experience. And like in the past, I smoked a bunch of Umagogs, I smoked a bunch of different things, but those are all like still very unique to me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm gonna spend the time, I want to smoke something unique. I don't want to smoke the same old things over and over again. And that's the same thing with beer too. Like it's an investment in my time and calories.
But that's what, yes, and that's the thing that the manufacturers are doing the right thing. Like Altadis teaming up with like AJ a lot was super smart, and now they've like done a lot of work on their own factory, kind of bringing it up to a modern standard. And I've tasted some test blends coming out of like this new version of TDG on some stuff that are unlike any TDG cigar I've smoked before. That are unreal, like phenomenal. They're getting like look how what Punch has been doing, or
Yes.
Cohiba. Cohiba also did one with the Cohiba M from El Titan de Bronze. Like they're getting hip to it. For some reason, this one institution refuses to acknowledge a lot of those things, and they're picking the same ones. And you know what? I kind of almost want to take Altadis almost out of this discussion, only because the ones that they've picked for Altadis over the past few years have been generally like newer. It's like they're not rating like a Romeo by Romeo from 10 years ago. And they have been kind of the more unique offerings from Altadis. So like the Cuatro Nicaragua, when they had the 175th on there. This year, I was a little more disappointed that like I thought something like the 180th would have been kind of right up their alley at Aficionado. And they like just kind of glossed over it. Like they didn't really, I don't know if they didn't review it. They might have, but they didn't put it in their list. And it's like you went again, you keep going back to something. You went back to something that was released. I mean, I remember testing a sample from Rafael Nadal of the 1935 when I was home during COVID, like 4 years ago. Now, I think this year it was the Espresso. It was like a newer size, but like it's 4 fucking years ago.
Yeah, dude.
That blend is 4 years old. Rafael has done amazing things with Plasencia, AJ, Flor de Copan, and TDG in the past 4 years, and you're acknowledging none of it. Oh, this one, we know this one. This one's easy. It's okay. This won't be controversial. And listen, Rocky, I mean, I think Rocky has done some really, really good work the past 10 years when he made his own factory. He's building another new factory now. They keep eluding him from the number one spot. It seems like number one's always going to go to, every couple of years they'll throw a wild card like Ernesto. I mean, Ernesto getting it twice in 3 years is like unheard of for anyone that's not Fuente or Padron or My Father. It's like Fuente, Padron, My Father will consistently get number ones, and then maybe they'll throw in an Ernesto, or maybe they'll throw in a Flor Dominicana, or maybe they'll throw in a Cuban. But like that's it. The last truly unique number one was probably La Flor Dominicana Andalusian Bull, which I think was like 2014, maybe 2013. And then it's just been My Father, Fuente, Padron, Cuban, 2 Ernestos. Oh no, the aging room. The aging room was a wild card. I didn't really see that one coming. And that was 6 years ago. So again, even within this realm, there's still another hierarchy. Even within these 9 companies, there's a hierarchy of like, yeah, but these are really the 3. we'll give the other ones in this top 9, the occasional number 2 or whatever. But it's really Fuente, Padron, my father are like, these are the guys who are getting it.
Right.
Most likely. And I don't know if we talked about it when we recorded. We definitely talked about it off air because I had talked to, I'm not going to say who, but friends of mine in the industry. And I called what it was. I didn't know the exact brand, but I knew who it was going to be before it came out.
I remember.
Like I said, it was
You
going
knew
to be.
this?
Yes, you did.
I didn't know it was going to be the judge. I knew it was going to be at my father.
Oh, interesting.
So as they counted down, we were all like, some of us were talking like, what do you think it's going to be? And Nick right away was like, it's going to be my father. Next day.
And again, that
boom.
wasn't on my own. I had talked to several friends who were like, I think, and then when I looked into it, I'm like, yeah, this one's missing. And the fact that it was just an alley-oop of a, yep, that's exactly what it was. No one should know what your number 1 is. Let me scratch that. For a company like ours, like we've talked about the bronze back all year on podcasts. We've done a couple of podcasts on it. It's been on a lot of Instagram. We posted a lot about it. I've spoken on a couple podcasts. So like, if you're watching that, then maybe you have an idea. But you shouldn't have next year. I don't want people to be like, oh, a Dunbarton's gonna be number 1 because it's always number 1. Like I don't want that.
No, but we've very rarely repeated back-to-back companies as our number 1. Our first year we did, like, you and Greg had a tie for first place just because of how much he loved the H. Upmann 175th.
And there's a lot of things that I think go into what makes a cigar a best of the year. Obviously, it starts with the blend. And it's not necessarily do you like the blend or not, because liking is personal. Everyone can like or not like something. Is it well made? Does it burn correctly? Does it do what it says it's going to do? If it's like, because you can like it or not, but if I smoke a cigar and I don't like something spicy, and the cigar says it's going to be very spicy, and I smoke it and it's very spicy, they did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
So that they get an A for that. Does it burn well? Are there flavor changes? If they are, are they too drastic? Is it like going to something totally different?
Like our number 3 was a Petite Panatella. Like I haven't seen any of the Petites on lists.
Yeah.
Like off the top of my head, I haven't,
And that was because they were able to replicate the experience of the late hour
in that size.
In a miniature size, which is very difficult to do. Yeah. So obviously the blend, all aspects of the blend and construction of the cigar go into if it's the best of. Second, I would say, what was the impact this cigar had on the industry this year? Was there a lot of buzz about it? Were people talking about it? Was it affecting people? Were people all about it? And number 3, which I think is probably equal to number 2 in terms of importance, what was the effect of this cigar on the company that released it? Was it a big deal for them? Did this elevate their sales, elevate their status? Was it a very unique offering, something that they did completely different? So like, the wise man like Corojo and Maduro from Foundation this year, very big deal for Foundation. Discontinuing the Old Wednesdays, moving to my father and doing a blend with them and reworking the creative. Or like when we did the Matapa.
Yeah.
Like having the 2 different versions of the San Andreas. Like, was it unique and impactful for the company that did it? These are the things that you need to check off those 3 boxes in my mind in order to be a best cigar of the year, because it was impactful, and it was the lowest of the grades. It was good. It was a good thing. I think all of the cigars on this list on CH Top 25 passed the first thing. I think they passed the second and third thing, but not now. I think they've hit the second and third parts years ago.
Yeah.
Now, some of them, like Opus, have maintained that, like, allure. And Oliva V is probably still the best-selling Oliva. But it's not changing the industry. It's not like, hey, here's a new way of doing things. Here's what the new people want. Hey, outside world, here's how our industry is evolving. It's not evolving. So that's it. I think we've said it. Hey, Rachel. It's okay. Just yeah. We're almost done. So I think it's really it's a shame for the industry. It's a shame for the companies that were named. It's a shame for the companies that weren't named. And I think look towards Half Wheel, Cigar Coop, Dojo. Look towards our list. I mean, honestly, I think the overall best list is the consensus from Half Wheel because it's a consensus of everybody. But that's my opinion, and I hope that we don't get an angry phone call from somebody about this list this year, about this episode.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
but
we're not the only ones that feel that way.
No, there was other podcasts that I saw like on YouTube from other industry people being like, is the list fixed?
Yeah.
So like it is. I've seen comments on their Instagram posts, and then I've seen those comments an hour later deleted. Like they're deleting all the negative comments.
Yeah.
Like they know what they're doing. So I'm going to say the same thing I say to them every year, and it's not out of hate or anything. It's out of pure love for this industry and respect for it. Do better. You owe the industry that's made you money, you owe them to do better by the companies that you are representing on your list and the companies that you have chosen to ignore. You owe all of them, you owe all of us to do a better job. And that's my final thought on it.
Amen.
All right?
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening.
Here's to a new year.
Yeah, new year, new me. Same old me. Look at that watch, though.
That's dope. Where'd you get that? Is that for Christmas?
Yeah, my girlfriend.
From the
got
wifey?
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Easy.
What? Sorry.
Calm there.
And don't say the W word.
But thank you very much all for listening. A lot of great stuff coming this year, so make sure to keep following us on all our platforms. A lot of cool social collaborations with some different influencers and such. Keep an eye out for that. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, keep it lit.